Drink Up. I think this is what week number 3 or 4, Shane, that we've been doing this live
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
A lot going on this week, Shane. Right?
Yeah. A lot in the news. I think it'll be an interesting start to 2025.
Yeah. So what we're talking about, and certainly have a lot of friends over at Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits. I'm wishing you all the very best. But been a lot of chatter on LinkedIn and social media that Southern just went through a massive reorg. So I'm wishing all those people that they did get transitioned out of the company. I'm wishing you all the best. But we wanted to talk about the impact of that. Is this just a tip of the iceberg of things to come in distribution? And what is the impact it's going to have on brands and customers? And are other distributors going to follow? What are your thoughts, Shane?
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. I was talking to a buddy in the industry yesterday, and I mean, it sucks every time. There's layoffs of that scale at a certain company, or especially at a company that's as big a player in the industry. That sucks. But from a brand side, I think that it might have to do with the fact that a lot of these smaller brands aren't bringing enough value to make distributors want to invest in it. And
Right.
because my gut reaction was, oh, this should open the door for a smaller distribution company to come in, right? Even if it's regionally or across the board. There's a reason there's market value there. There's a reason that nobody's doing it. There's a reason that, and it's not because it's tough to get started as a distributor. If there were brands that were bringing value to distributors that couldn't all fit under Southern Glacier or RNDC, there would be smaller distributors opening up to help support those brands. And I think I was talking to a buddy of mine, like I said yesterday, who's a brand manager, and one of the big frustrations is there's so many brands, but even with the brands he has, he can't get enough value out of them. He's trying to get more value to help his salespeople sell more, to drive more growth, and he can't do it. And I don't, some of that may be market conditions. I'm not sure, but that's the thing that stuck out to me was that we've got to be able to give distributors more value, not necessarily even for Southern Glacier, but because if we can do that, there will be opportunities for other distribution companies or even new distribution companies to come in.
Yeah, I think it's a logistics issue, meaning I got a truck, I got drivers, I got to fill that truck up, and I got to go out in the market and I got to make deliveries, right?
Yeah,
And I know this is like your wheelhouse.
yeah,
Uh, but if I can't fill that truck up and maximize that delivery schedule for that day or that week,
yeah,
does it make sense for me to make those stops? Right. So I got to believe part of this is from a logistics issue is the value that I get out of that brand. I got to be able to make, I got my salespeople have to actually get the customer to buy it, and they have to buy so much volume in order for me to deliver it, right? So I think part of this is maybe they're going to stop. And again, I have no idea,
yeah.
so this is just an opinion piece here. But I'm assuming what they're going to do is probably make less stops, and for customers that can't buy enough product to actually make the stop, they're going to push them to probably telcells,
Yeah,
right? And they're going to go into some form of a family plan, I'm
yeah,
assuming. And then if you hit that minimum, you'll be able to get a delivery and you'll be able to get that stop.
yeah,
But I think it's what you just said is if I'm a brand manager, your friend, and I have these brands, they got to be able to bring that value, the pull, right? I can push it out, but once I push it out, is there going to be enough pull for that customer to actually place that order? Is that what you're saying?
yeah. I think some of it is, especially with brand managers, I have a lot of empathy for them because I always tell people as a brand manager, you're getting it from your distribution management to sell more for your brands, and you're also getting it from the brands to sell more for them. So you're kind of you're getting it from both sides as a brand manager, and it drives this, I would say, frustration. But a lot of brands just don't have their stuff together nearly enough as they should, and we've come into this time in the segment or the industry where it's like a trophy business to have a brand. It's like billionaires buy sports teams, people with a little bit of money buy a brand, and they come into it and they're like, okay, sell my stuff. And it's just like, you got to have your stuff together. And the brands that do, we were talking about Happy Dad yesterday, they crush it, but they have a lot of distributor support. They're out there trying to build the brand. To me, that's That's the differentiator. And I think on the other side of it, distribution's just tough, and there might not be a perfect solution in terms of like servicing every account, every week, that you might have to bump it down a little bit. And I think it's just a tough time for distributors in terms of, the industry's changed a bunch over the past few years, and trying to see where it settles out a little bit and maybe not losing their shirts. Again, I don't know the specifics of the situation, but I would guess maybe, yeah, trying to see where some of these brands kind
Well,
of settle
it's
out.
funny you spend. I think it does have to kind of settle in because there's been a big transition here.
Yeah.
You know, as it sober October was probably the biggest sober October on record. Now they're talking about October being the new New Year's, making
Yeah.
resolutions, right? So
Yeah.
people are really changing their habits really quickly and are looking for better for you brands. But we have all these brands that are like tequilas and bourbons and rums. That's not how people shop and think anymore.
Yeah.
And people also are looking for experiences better for you, and they want to experience that brand and know the story. So I got to think part of Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits decision making is they're probably looking at their brand portfolios. I'm not talking about the big guys, the
Yeah.
Diageos, et cetera, but I'm talking about the long tail suppliers that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at those portfolios and say, where is my opportunity to maximize that? And two, as I said earlier, they're looking at the customers. Can the customers actually buy enough for me to afford to deliver to them? Because there's a cost of delivery. I
Yeah.
spoke to a guy this week, and I'll remain nameless purposely, but he's opening up distribution across the U.S. for NA products.
Yeah.
And he made it very clear to me that he's not going to call on every account. And I was kind of chuckling. He goes, well, why are you chuckling? And I said, well, I think that's what most distributors are going to do. They're going to go to the large, and medium sized accounts because they got to make their stops in advantageous.
Yeah.
But it leaves this gaping hole of Wisconsin has like on every street corner. There's a bar and a church on every corner in Wisconsin. So all those bars are going to eventually stop being serviced, or they're going to have to go to some location and go pick up.
Yeah.
I actually think this is going to change the laws, quite frankly, because small suppliers and producers are going to be like, well, wait a minute, I can't even get delivery or on the truck because my brand doesn't have enough volume to actually warrant me getting on the truck. So, hey, government, what can I self deliver? So I think this is going to open up a whole
Can you not sell
opportunity.
distro in Minnesota?
You can.
Okay.
So yeah, producers can do a little bit of that for sure, state by
Okay.
state.
Yeah.
In
Right.
some
Right.
cases, probably by municipality. But
Yeah.
yeah, so some of these small producers are going to have to self distribute or build their brand. I was talking to a guy out of Ohio because my wife's from Southern Ohio
Oh.
and friends with a brand down there, but he self distributes to over 200 accounts. But I think you're going to start seeing a lot of that start to happen. You're going to have to build to a threshold and then almost graduate into a Southern. I mean, I think the smaller wholesalers, I'm talking the mid tier, like, the Wine Bows,
Yeah.
Mavericks of the world. I got to believe they got to follow too, especially have you watched the wine business lately? What's going on there?
Yeah. I mean, you would think that it should be an opportunity for those mid and low level wholesalers to kind of invest and I don't want to say fill in the gap, but take some of that market share. But it may just not be there, like we were saying.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting
A lot of
problem.
portfolios are, as you were saying, completely changing because there's always been some change in the market, but there was certain portions of your portfolio that you could rely on for consistent business, and maybe you'd change. I mean, like I said, with whether it's functional, NA, so much of the segment's changing, and I think it's changing for retailers too. So retailers that are used to selling beer, wine, liquor, all of a sudden they may be trying to figure out who they are. Do I sell Delta 9? Do I sell non-alcoholic beer? How much of my shelf space do I give over to that? And it's just this transition period where everybody's trying to figure it out, and it may just take some time for things to settle in a little bit because I hate to admit it, I haven't been in the market as much as I should be, but when you walk into a liquor store, you say like, all right, there's the spirits, there's the wine. Now you're thinking like, oh, they're trying Delta 9 here. They're coming with NA beer here. How much, mocktail spirits that should they have? And it's just a transition time where everybody's trying to figure it out. And there's a little bit of, unsureness.
Well, I can tell you, I talked to a friend of mine, and he bought for Bevmo for 3 years. Now he calls on the Bevmos and the Total Wine and Moors. And he was telling me, we were talking about brands. What brands would you actually go take to Bevmo and Total Wine and More?
Yeah.
And I'm like, he goes, I want to take a tequila or a rum or Me Too brand.
Yeah.
And I go, what would you take? He said, I would take a Better For You product like a Delta 9, some type of mocktail. He's like, and matter of fact, we were talking about this mocktail because this mocktail will actually really go here. They're going to want to go direct on this thing, or
Yeah.
some product that has an ingredient that's better for you. And we talked about like, he goes, I wouldn't take a tequila or rum because they got plenty of tequilas and rums and whiskeys on the shelf.
The crazy thing to me is that they're doing it as they should because that's where the growth is. But I don't think anybody knows how much will stick, what will stick. So they're almost trying things out because they have to. I've thought that 5 years from now, we may settle back into where there's some functional stuff, there's some NA stuff, but and the traditional alcoholic stuff gains a little of strength back. I was talking to an energy drink brand this week, and even in that segment, it's better for you. They're like, well, we have electrolytes, so you don't get the crash, and it's just such a trend. It'll be interesting to see where it settles out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits is doing too, is they're repositioning themselves in the marketplace, right?
Yeah,
Again, it's I got to fill the truck, I got to make delivery. Again, I've never talked to anyone over there, nor should they be sharing with me what their plans are. But I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think the next thing you're going to see is retailers start to look at their assortments and
yeah,
start to change what those shelves look like. You just
yeah,
said it. Of the consumers looking for better for you, and you just talk about your energy drink company. Hey, look, we're adding a little bit of more healthier things into this product. It's less about the caffeine, more about what the ingredients is. I have a friend that actually is founding a brand called Naventus, and Naventus is actually, have ingredients that have the efficacious level within the ingredients to actually go to market and make it better for you. So consumers definitely want that, and that's as Southern repositions himself, and I've got to tell you, I guess R&D was there before. I think RNDC was there before Southern,
yeah,
but I gotta believe that the other wholesalers are going to follow because the categories are shifting. I'll just give you an example. If I'm a wholesaler and I'm an importer, and I'll remain nameless wholesalers, but if I'm an importer of wine and my whole focus has always been on wine, but yet my spirits portfolio and my functional portfolio is growing greater than wine, don't you think I'm going to reposition how I do
yeah.
things?
Yeah, and as a distributor, you kind of, like I said, you're used to being able to look at the sets and know what you can attack, what you can sell at, what kind of share you have of those sets. But now you're looking at it and you don't even know what the set looks like, and it's just
Yeah,
going
or
to
you don't know what's coming. Now, some of the big guys, Southern has a whole national account team. I'm sure they're very close to the Walmarts and the Totals and the Bethmos of the
yeah,
world. So they probably have a sense of what's happening and a lot of collaboration. But definitely the next tier wholesalers don't have those type of relationships. They don't know what's coming, but they're going to have they. If Southern can afford to make the stop, how do you think a mid-tier wholesaler can afford to make the stop?
yeah. And it's important to remember that. I mean, the level of overhead that distributors carry to invest into brands, just what they're putting out there, and that they need to make it profitable. Like they're not just doing it to do it. And you talk about chains. It's been interesting because I've talked to a couple brands recently who have reached out and said, "Hey, can you help us with chains? Can you help us submit this? What's the value prop? Like we're just going to keep firing products at chains and hope it. It's such a crowded. I can't even imagine as a chain buyer how many calls you're getting every day, or emails, or pitches, or can you put this in your sets? Why? And we've talked about it before, like with value prop or brand identity or whatever it is. Why should the retailer put it in there? Chains are getting thousands of products pitched to them, and you just
Hmm.
have a similar product and expect them to put it on there. And I'm sure there's frustration with that on the distributor side too. because they're trying to get chain sets. They're trying to adapt with changing markets and segments, and it just helps if you give them a little
Well,
bit to work with.
yeah, that's a whole other thing. Again, the Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits is going to impact that because it's
Yeah,
a chicken and egg problem too. If I'm a brand and I can get into Safeway, Target, Walmart, I have more opportunity of getting into Southern and on their truck because Southern's making that stop, right?
yeah.
But you're right, the value proposition is like, okay, Shane, help me get a brand. Or like, well, tell me a little bit about your brand. What's your story? Do you have a distributor? You know, like why would the retailer want me? Or you'll help them with their story, right?
Yeah, well, there again, I've been working with a brand who's gotten in. They're trying to go into the Chicago market, and they got Benny's placements. And they asked
Yeah.
me, "Do you think that'll help with a distributor?" Yeah, I do. Yeah, like you said, because
Yeah.
the distributor's most likely going to Benny's anyway. I would think. Now
Oh,
you're just
it's the
adding,
number one retailer in Chicago. I
right?
promise you, they're going to
Yeah,
Benny's.
and
Everybody's
but
trying to
you've
get
added
Benny's.
stuff onto their truck. You've got
Yeah.
sales baked in, and that's a value add. And I thought it was great. Um, but yeah, the chains can be tough if you're not. And I tell people this: chains are a proving ground. They're not a training ground for your brand because if it doesn't go well in there,
Yeah.
you're off, and you're probably not getting back
Oh,
in.
yeah. Yeah. Benny's has what's called end of Ben.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't tell you when you're going end to bend, and end and bend could actually start in a store. But yeah, the clock is ticking when you get into distribution. I'm telling you, anybody tell your brand if you're in Benny's, make sure that you participate in their MOP program, which is basically their yellow tag program,
Okay.
and then go to the buyer, whoever their buyer is, and make sure that that buyer allows them to do tastings. Those
Yeah.
are the two essential things you need to make sure you do once you're there. But if you're in Benny's with your brand, if you don't have a wholesaler, the wholesaler will take you on because you've
Oh, for
done the
sure.
work. I mean, there's 47 to 49 stores in the Illinois marketplace, and they crush it out there for sure. And the good news is brands, distributors like Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits, even though with their reorg, they're going to be making stops at Benny's.
Oh
Just
yeah.
all the mom and pop stores around there, they may not be. At least I'm assuming they may not be, or they'll move it to Telcel and make less stops.
Well, and it says to the distributor there must be some value in this brand. A chain, especially a chain like Benny's that carries a ton of weight. If they're willing to take the brand on, it's almost like a reference, like proof positive. Oh, there's got to be something there, and you've got the baked in stops. There's just
Yeah.
value there.
I mean, if you have a brand that has a good value proposition to get the buyer to take a look, right?
Yeah.
I would think that value proposition is if it's something that's new and different in the spirits category that the consumer's leaning towards. RTDs is a great example, right? It seems like everybody and their mom has a new RTD.
Yeah.
So that's something they're probably going to take a look at. That category is constantly changing. Better for you is another, opportunity. And then this whole NA space, I literally talked to two people this week, and they're setting up NA distribution and also doing a little bit of direct consumer stuff as well. But that's a whole new frontier, right? I mean, with Diageo just bought like an NA brand or about a couple of them or whatever. I think you're going to continue to see that trend. And then there's a lot of NA wines out of Europe that are going to start coming into the marketplace. They're kind of like that next tier of wine. And I'm
Yeah.
not taking away from the first tier of all the folks and all the great work they've done, but the next tier is actually just getting better. They're just going to get better in how they make it and how it tastes.
Yeah.
And look, if I'm a consumer, I'll get real life story, and it ties into what Southern's doing, by the way. But my mom has dementia and she's in assisted living.
Okay.
Okay, you're like, where is he going with this? But my mom was a big drinker. You know what we did is we shifted her wine to non-alcoholic wine, and she didn't know the difference, nor could she understand. So we got her Chardonnay and a Cabernet and the whole bit, right? So that she used to go do her pickup at Publix. Now that pickup at Publix still happens, but it shifted from an alcoholic wine to non-alcoholic wine, right?
Yep.
So if I'm a buyer at Publix, I'm going to start seeing it in my data set.
Oh, totally.
I'm going to start purchasing based on that. Southern, as a brand manager, is going to say, "Hey, I'm starting to see these NA brands start to go. They're bringing me more value." And then Southern's operational people are like, "Wow, there's a lot more." Um, NA products going on the truck. See how? So I'm just kind of working it backwards,
Yeah.
through the supply chain and what's happening. And I think that's part of the change we just saw. And I think it is the tip of the iceberg. You're going to see things shift. I mean, these NA bottle shops, I know that some of them are starting to pop up. Some popped up, some closed. You're going to see Total expand more offerings. It's just
Yeah.
the landscape. I think what happened at Southern this week is just the landscape is just changing.
Well, and it takes some time because the buyers have to start to see the change in trends, and they communicate those to the wholesalers, and the wholesalers have to go out and find new brands to represent. So there is a lot of transition. I think that the industry will end up in a better place because of it. It just takes some time for it to play out and kind of figure out where we're going to settle.
Yeah. So, excuse me. I've been fighting the flu here. What changes do you see coming? One and two, if you're a brand, this big announcement just happened. We think we're Shane and Sam are saying we're saying, hey, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The other distributors are going to follow. So depending where you're at or where you want to be, what can a brand do to take advantage of this opportunity or to keep themselves from becoming a casualty in this change?
Yeah, I would think probably starting about a year ago, but as we move forward, if you don't have I mean, I'll speak specifically to beer, but if you don't have your stuff lined up, whether it's your brand identity, the value that you're bringing to retailers or a distributor, you're going to phase out. Like you're just going to get phased out.
Yeah.
And I read a quote the other day. I can't remember what book it was in, but the quote was about going through hard times. You're about to find something out about yourself, and you may not like what you find. And that's going to be
Uh,
the reckoning for brands here is that if you're not sure of what you have in place, that's going to show through here as we move forward. I was speaking to a craft brewery here in Pennsylvania about it because we've just recently legalized RTDs in terms of traditional retailers can sell them. Usually it was just wine and spirit stores run by the state here. So now convenience stores, grocery stores, beer stores, they can all sell RTDs. So if you're a craft brewery, your shelf just went from here to here, right? There's a reckoning because beer retailers and grocery stores have shrunk the craft shelf to make room for RTDs. They're not kicking off brands that are
so
pulling
high
through.
noon can go into convenience stores and all
Yeah.
that. Oh wow.
Previously in PA, only the state-run liquor stores could sell it. So we've made that change in the last month here, and it's affected craft beer shelves because those retailers have
You
taken.
still have to go through the state by that, by the way, or
I believe so. I believe Giant Eagle has to go through the state to buy it, and there's
okay.
something about price competition there that if the state liquor stores carry the SKU, the grocery stores or the beer stores cannot carry the same SKU for a lower price.
Ah,
But the liquor stores are taking high margins or they have higher price points. So what you're starting to see these companies do is come out with new SKUs that haven't been put into the liquor store yet.
ah,
But the point being is that the shelf space is shrinking for craft beer specifically. There was too much.
yeah,
So that's a reckoning point. If you're getting kicked off of shelves, there's still craft beer. Craft beer's still going to do pretty well. But if you're one of the brands getting kicked off, it was going to happen, whether it was RTDs or NAs, it was going to happen. So get your stuff lined up now because it is a tough market. But to just sit here and say, well, the market's tough, blah, blah, yeah, okay. Yes, you and everybody
yeah,
else too.
yeah. Have your brand identity though, then lay out your entire plan, right? And be very clear because what you just described, what's happening on the shelf is that there's compression in craft beer, right? Well,
Yep.
guess what? That brand manager's like, there's compression in my category. I'm selling less craft beers, and now this open up, I'm selling more RTDs. And
Yeah.
then the operations guy or the guy that manages the warehouse, he's like, wait a minute. I have all this space dedicated to craft beer, but yeah, I have no space for RTDs.
Yeah.
I got to start compressing that. So it's going to work up and down the supply chain in some compression. So if I'm a craft beer, you better make sure that you have your brand identity really identified and what you're trying to accomplish because just got really more. You're not just competing against other craft beer.
And the weird part of it is that it also instantly got more competitive for RTDs because they all want to be in those spaces now. And it's like we're restarting the same cycle of craft beer. Craft beer got hot, so everybody wanted to be in there. Now RTDs are getting hot, at least in PA, and everybody wants to be in there. But you still have to have a value prop, a brand identity, what your brand is, what it brings to the table. Because if you don't, there's 1,000 RTD brands that want to get that shelf space now. Maybe you'll
Yeah.
get it for the first month or two, but there's going to be competition to stay there. So regardless of the segment, you've got to have, your brand's foundation in place, or it's going to be short lived.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's going to be an interesting few weeks in terms of how this comes together. I know if I'm a brand and I'm at a Southern or any distributor, I would go into my distributor. So ask them how their business is doing.
Yeah.
What are their plans for 2025? How many deliveries do you make this year? Do you see that changing? What customers? What is your universe of customers that you call on? Do you see that universe changing? What type of customers do you call on? Do you have referrals from your customers about your delivery? What kind of scores do you get from customer service back from your
Yeah.
customers? I think as a brand, you have every right. We've said this over the course of time, Shane, is you're interviewing that distributor as much as they're interviewing you.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, based on what happened this week, we definitely see that there's going to be a change in the landscape and how distributors go to market
Yeah.
and suppliers. I have to assume they're going to be talking to their lobbyists and the government in terms of how they go to market as well. I always advocate for distributors, by the way, to be crystal clear. I don't think you can go to market without them. The data is pretty clear in terms of what they do for a brand. But to
Yeah.
your point, you have to have that brand identity. You have to have that ABP in place. You got to do, the blocking and tackling and be well thought out and well prepared.
Yeah, and I told someone a couple weeks ago, I think there's actually value in, getting on the phone with a couple of distributors, maybe even before you're ready to pitch them, and just see what they need kind of industry wide, what they're looking for from brands. I have a buddy who's an assistant college football coach, and he talks about how quality quarterback play has gone down and it's harder to find. So if you're a high school football player and you want to get on a college football roster, you know, can you bring value as a quarterback? People don't, they don't, I guess, invest as much in running backs, or running backs don't play as key a role. So maybe it's harder to get onto a college football team if you're a running back. Call a distributor and say, like, what roles do you need filled? Whether you're starting a new brand or you have a brand that you're looking to kind of refine a little bit,
Yeah.
what roles do you need filled? What are your really good suppliers doing? What can we do to be a better supplier? And all of a sudden you've got a distributor's ear, and brand identity is crucial. But beyond that, how can you bring value to a distributor? How can you, it's like when you start out as an intern or an employee, you offer to get the coffee, or you offer to, stay late and finish up a presentation. How can we bring value to you as a distributor? Because everybody's going through it. It's a competitive industry. There's a lot of, lack of, there's unsureness. Everybody's going through it. Everybody's a little bit worried. Let's help each other. Distributors, they have their flaws, suppliers have their flaws, but they're not the big evil empire. We're all trying to get through it here. How can you bring more value? Because that'll help you stand out.
Well, it's funny. I talk about this at the company I do work for, Altamar Brands, and we sit on bar stools,
Hmm.
and we were having some conversations back and forth. And we have a Texas State general manager named Christina. And this week she went out and she secured two really big things. She got distribution across five different brands: Right Gin, Avelo, Probitas, RL Seals, and High and Wicked. In one account, she got like five brands. And then the
Wow.
other account, she moved a brand called Lagermas, and she moved it up into convinced them to do a high value menu placed for that brand. So she got exposure.
Yeah.
The distributor didn't do that, but guess what she did?
She's bringing value to the distributor.
She's bringing value to distributors. So she followed up with Alex and Cedric, her two contacts over at the distributor, and she made that salesperson's day, because that salesperson
Yeah.
is going to get commission off those placements that are going to start working for that salesperson. And the idea, the whole thing is that she becomes contagious, right? and then that
100%.
then it starts to spread within the wholesaler. Because I was going down there, every other month, and guess what happened when I would go to Texas and leave?
They didn't, I mean,
Nothing. I
yeah.
always say this to you. I say this every time I talk to you. Every time I go to Texas, I have all this great success and I leave and nothing happens. The good news is Christina's there and she can follow up each week and that then it's going to stick, right? So the
Yeah.
antibiotics are not going to take. That contagion is going to expand and it's like this is going to take over Texas.
Well, you've helped the salesperson out at the distributor, so now they're happy with you.
Yeah.
Next time they go into an account and they need to put in a placement, they're more likely to recommend that brand or one of those brands,
Yeah.
which makes her happier, and it just kind of feeds off of each other. And I think, God, it's so simple, but everybody's going through it. Brand managers dealing with a lot, distributor salespeople are dealing with a lot, brands are dealing with a lot. The more that you can help people out that you're working with, and it's funny, you always say, we're sitting on bar stools, and I was in market working with a brand in person for a couple of days, and the level of connection you get that when you're in person with someone, when you're having a beer with them, when you're having lunch. I mean, I'm as guilty as anyone, video meetings and post COVID, but just get with people. What are your issues? Sometimes people just want to be heard. Look, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me out here? And I think it just goes such a long way into kind of building those connections and relationships that people want to help you out.
Well, I promise you this, with the change at Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits,
Yeah.
they may make less stops. Maybe that's not even their plan. Maybe they have less people, but you as a supplier, if you get out there and you get on that bar stool and you build that relationship and talk to that retailer and then hand that over back to your distributor, I promise you your business is going to grow because that's the
Yeah.
value you're talking about. Regardless of all the stuff that's happening around you, you have no control over what's going to happen in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But you do have control over what's going to happen with your brand. And you say it, the brand identity and the value you bring. And I know if I'm a small brand, the best thing you can do is to get in the market, sit on that bar stool, tell your story, you know, go to those customers, taste your product, and activate. And then let the Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits and all the other wholesalers make their changes around you. You're
Yeah.
going to be just fine. But you always say you have to have a well thought out plan,
Yeah.
before you begin that stuff. Just don't go out there with a machine gun approach. You should be very strategic about what you do and where you go too.
Well, and get the feedback from the buyers. What are customers saying? I don't know. We're making a double IPA. People aren't drinking double IPAs on draft as much. Just get that
Yeah.
feedback. Or, you're making a session IPA. People really love it. If you add a little bit of fruit to it, you know, it could take off even more. They'd have a lot of valuable feedback. And then, whether it's your salespeople, distributor brand managers, just take them
Yeah.
out for a beer, listen to them, see what their struggles are, see how you can help. It sounds so cliche, but just people, it's a tough industry for everybody. The more that you can just hear people out, see how you can help them, it's going to go a long way for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you said that too. Is ask them, listen to them, because my friend posted this or sent me. I don't know if she posted it. Maybe she posted it to something I posted, but she said a lot of times when people are talking, people aren't listening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
I believe it.
what you said is go ask someone the question, and maybe they're looking for less IPAs, more fruit forward IPs, whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
whatever it is. Yeah.
But listen to them, and after you listen to them, more importantly, maybe maybe come back with one or two ideas.
Yeah.
Do something, some form of action, some small step, and over the course of time, if you do that across the U.S. or across PA, wherever it may be, Shane,
Yeah.
I promise you, it's going to have an impact. But you got to listen to your point.
I mean, they could say something like, we're trying to get more volume on trucks. We're trying to get higher margin items on trucks, whatever it is. So you could go back to your brand and say, maybe we run a quantity discount because distributors are trying to get more volume on trucks. Or maybe we come out with a higher
Yeah,
margin SKU because they're trying to get higher margins on the trucks. And all of a sudden, 2 months later, you come back with a new product to a distributor and they're like, just what we needed. Because you just sit and you have a beer with the guy and just see what their struggles are.
yeah. have a beer with a guy, see what their struggles are, and while you're having that beer at that pub or a
Talk to the
restaurant,
bartender.
that talk to the bartender,
Yeah.
listen to them, and then do something. I think the hardest part is people don't listen, or they want to convey their message, but they're not adjusting based on the feedback they're getting. Maybe that's what's happening. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think it's a human nature thing with ego where you try and force it. Like, this is the result you've already got in your head. It's your result. You want to make
Yeah,
it work. So you're trying to find a way to make it work as opposed to trying to figure out what the result should look like and then operating accordingly.
yeah. Yeah, well, this has been an interesting discussion. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the coming weeks with Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits. I wish all those folks their very best, as well as
Yeah.
Southern's leadership. I know that they had they obviously had made some tough decisions, but I'm sure it's for the betterment of the business. I'm sure others will follow or adjust. I'm wishing the customers that could potentially be impacted the best, as well as suppliers. Any closing thoughts from you, Shane, on this?
No, the one thing I'll say is, again, I sent out an email to my email list of brands this week and I said, whether it's people from Southern or whether this continues to happen, there's going to be some experienced, capable, talented salespeople available. Take advantage of that,
Ah,
and because those can be hard to find, and a lot of times it's hard to pull them from a big company like Southern Glazer. So they can bring a lot of value to a brand. So it's something to keep an eye out for, and a potential upside to this.
that is that's a very good point. All the folks out there certainly reach out because
Yeah,
there's opportunities in the market. It's just in a market adjustment. So maybe you were
yeah.
working for Southern yesterday and you're working for a brand tomorrow, or you're working for yourself. I think there's a huge opportunity there for sure. You just got to be open to it.
And I would take that as a positive. If I can bring a lot to a brand. I've done a lot on the distributor side. I can bring a lot, and I always talk to brands that I need good salespeople. I need people with experience with some
Yeah.
hustle. I mean, if you're bringing that to the table, there's somebody out there.
Well, I had a friend forward a kind of a resume of a guy that reached out of Texas, right? And he goes, "Do you know him?" I said, "Well, I've heard of him."
Yeah,
I immediately went into his LinkedIn profile and I saw he was connected to. And then I replied back to my friend and said, "Well, the guy seems legit. He seems to
yeah,
know every key decision maker within within the distributors across the regions that he says he calls on." So I'm assuming, I said, Art, he could probably pick up the phone and actually get a meeting with the distributor. So think about that for a second. If I'm a brand, this person just lost their job, but they can pick up the phone and get you a meeting in Southern California with Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits. That's pretty powerful.
100%. And it's this was me 8 or 9 months ago, but just a little bit of work on LinkedIn, it goes a long way. That networking,
Yeah, yeah,
you know
100%.
better than anybody. You're the best at it.
I wouldn't say that. I'm learning from people like yourself, Shane. But I just like giving here. I mean, that's my thing. But I've made a lot of good friends over the last 18 months. It's been a journey.
Yeah,
But LinkedIn, hands down, I will tell you this: those folks that have lost their jobs, if you're not on LinkedIn,
yeah.
if you happen to come across this, get on LinkedIn, start connecting with folks, and share with them what you do, for sure. Because it's not the rest of your journey. What happened to you this week or last week is not going to define what's going to happen to you in the future. But you definitely, I made my best friends here. Heck, I met you here, which is
And there's
awesome.
always people are always companies, brands, distributors are always looking for good people. Just get on there and put yourself, whether it's LinkedIn or calling people, just put yourself out there a little bit.
Yeah,
There's always room for good people in the industry, no matter how competitive it is. And
yeah.
just think there's just a little bit of change going on, but you can land in a good place.
Yeah, 100%. Put yourself out there. I always tell people, pick up the phone and dial. Call 10 people a week. Well, I haven't talked to him for years. It'll be like you talked to him yesterday. Just pick up the phone and call him.
It's weird because, at least for me, I never want to be that person to call. Oh, I haven't talked to him. But when I'm the person getting called, I always enjoy it. Like, oh, I haven't
Yeah,
talked to him forever. It's just you got to get over that little hump. But once you start getting used to doing it, it's great.
yeah, 100%. All right, man. Well, it's been another great
Always
Saturday, my friend. We'll see everybody next week. And please put your questions in the chat, and we'll talk soon. Wishing
appreciate
everybody
it.
a wonderful weekend. All right. Yeah, that was good. That'd be
Yeah.
some extra. You been grabbing any excerpts out of this stuff? And
Yeah, I started to put a couple up. I